Hello out there, everybody. Manny here at Area 503. And I hope you all have been well since our last video. Today I just want to talk to you all about some recent interesting science and technology news articles that I found. To start, I'd like to talk about this Insider.com article that reported that a former NASA intern could earn millions of dollars after auctioning off the original videos of the moon landing. The auction house Sothebys has promised the recordings are the earliest, sharpest, and most accurate surviving video images of man's first steps on the moon, and that the videos are expected to sell for between $1 and $2 million when they go to auction on July 20th. A former NASA intern by the name of Gary George purchased boxes of films back in the 1970s at a government surplus auction. These unknown Apollo 11 reels were found inside of that collection. Well, good for George. I'm glad that he will stand to make a sizable sum of money for finding these recordings. And what amazing timing. They were located just in time to be auctioned on the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 Lunar Landing. It almost makes me wonder if these recordings were actually located earlier, but they were stashed away in order to fetch a better price at a later auction. In the article, they revealed that Mr. George actually did recover and identify these films back in 2008. I can only speculate that he held on to them in order to try to increase their value, and I think that's kind of a shame, because these recordings are a part of a vital piece of human history. And besides that point, intellectual property that NASA collects falls in the public domain, as NASA is a publicly funded organization. This means that whoever actually owns those recordings only owns those physical film recordings, not the licensing right to the content contained on the film. The American public owns that intellectual property, so whoever buys the recordings will not be able to license it out or restrict its usage. I just can't wait to get my hands on a copy of this stuff so I can review it for y'all. So keep your eyes open for a follow-up to this story later. NASA finds himself at the center of our next story as well. We first spoke about the NEOCAM project back in episode 8 when we talked about the project's predecessor, NEOWISE, and now it seems like the project might be getting scrapped. On July 5th, MSN reported that NASA nixes hunt for deadly asteroids. In the article, MSN reports that, quote, NASA says it can't afford to build a space telescope considered the fastest way to identify asteroids that may impact the Earth with terrible consequences, end quote. They go on by talking about the 2015 legislative mandate that ordered NASA to identify 90% of near-Earth objects larger than 140 meters or 460 foot in diameter. I first spoke about the NEOCAM back in episode 28, and in that episode we talked about the impossible 2015 mandate placed upon NASA. In my opinion, asking NASA to identify 90% of large near-Earth objects by the year 2020 with the current technology available to them was about the same as giving MacGyver a slingshot, a roll of duct tape, some aluminum foil, a budget of $2.50, and expecting him to somehow devise an orbital launch vehicle somehow by the end of the episode. It's ludicrous. And it might work on TV, but it doesn't work in real life. Now, to me, this sort of unrealistic expectation tells me that there is a complete ignorance on the part of lawmakers as to the current status of the planetary protection capabilities of NASA. Now, I gotta tell y'all, I find that idea extremely terrifying. How can lawmakers make decisions and dictate budgets if they are clueless about the technological capabilities of their agencies? They must make the time to educate themselves on this topic. Large near-Earth objects are a threat to the entire planet. We cannot afford to allow this topic to become politicized. Anyhow, the article continues by stating that the National Academy of Sciences issued a report finding that NEOCAM was the fastest way to identify near-Earth objects, but apparently NASA has decided to defund the project. A NASA spokesperson said, quote, "The Planetary Defense Program and NASA does not have sufficient funding to approve development of a full space-based near-Earth object survey mission as was proposed by the NEOCAM project." End quote. Instead, the agency says it has decided to fund a ground-based satellite system and that they are funding a program called the Double Asteroid Redirect Test, or DART program, instead. So let me get this straight. NASA wants to defund an asteroid detection mission, and instead they want to use that money to fund a asteroid redirect mission, which is essentially a big gun to shoot asteroids away from the planet should they come too close. This seems like a classic case of putting the cart before the horse. Now let me ask you this. What good is having a big-ass gun if you can't detect anything to shoot it at until too late? Does anybody else see the irony in this? The article goes on with the assertion that the NEOCAM project has indeed been politicized, and that an NAS report on the topic of funding recommended that, quote, "missions meeting with high-priority planetary defense objectives should not be required to compete against missions meeting high-priority science objectives," end quote. Now, I couldn't agree with this statement anymore. Planetary protection should not have to compete with scientific endeavors for funding. It's just common sense. Furthermore, I fail to understand why missions such as NEOCAM are solely funded by the United States Space Agency. Planetary protection is a global priority. So maybe NASA would be more inclined to allocate funding to NEOCAM if some of these other space agencies donated money to help fund it. After all, planet-killer asteroids don't care about your nation, race, religion, or how much money you have. If one of these things hits the planet, it's all gone. Game over. That being said, maybe someone at NASA should reach out to JAXA or the ESA and see if they've got a few bucks to throw in at the NEOCAM. Let's do this thing together in a spirit of cooperation and to the benefit of all. In the last part of the article, there is a quote from MIT planetary scientist Richard Binzel, where he states, quote, "Although highly unlikely, being taken by surprise by a catastrophic asteroid impact that could have been detected would be an epic failure in the history of science. We now have the capability to know what's out there, meaning we have no excuse for an ongoing lack of knowledge." End quote. I couldn't agree with him more. There is no excuse. I guess we'll just have to see what they come up with for a solution. So for now, we can't do much more than just wait and hope that NASA knows what they're doing. For now, let's go ahead and move on to our next topic, which is this amazing photograph of the secret X-37B Space Plane in orbit. On July 5th, Space.com reported that a satellite tracker in the Netherlands had photographed the secret space plane using a 10-inch telescope. Apparently, he was having quite a time tracking the space plane as it would move from orbit to orbit, and so he enlisted the help of an amateur satellite observation network. Together, they were able to track the X-37B, resulting in some photographic images that were captured on June 30th and July 2nd. Now, I just want to comment on this because the X-37B is one of the most secretive programs in the military today. And it wasn't a foreign intelligence agency that caught it on film, but a network of amateurs and a guy in his backyard with a telescope. I think that just shows what people are capable of when they work together towards a common goal. Anyhow, there is the plane in orbit, and it appears to have its payload bay doors open, but nobody really knows what that thing is doing up there, except for the military, and of course, they're not talking. The X-37B is currently in the middle of its 5th mission, and I will link to the Wikipedia entry for this project so you all can go and read up on it for yourselves. They do list the quote-unquote official missions of the project, but I'm not entirely convinced that that's actually what is going on with this plane. We could speculate all day long about what this thing is and what its missions actually are. And someday we might, but not today. So let's move on to our next subject, which is a phys.org article that is titled "Scientists Combine Light and Matter to Make Particles with New Behavior."
Initiate emergency medical holographic program.
Please state the nature of the medical emergency.
I don't think we're going to be getting holographic doctors and holodecks just yet. However, I do find this article fascinating. They talk in the article about how every type of atom in the universe has a unique fingerprint based upon the orbits of its electrons. Apparently, scientists have discovered how to modify this signature by, quote, shaking electrons with lasers to create doppelganger features at new energies. A breakthrough that lets scientists create hybrid particles which are part atom and part light, end quote. They then go on to say that the application of this technology could lead to faster computers or virtually unhackable quantum communications. I presume here that they are talking about applying quantum entanglement to some form of communications. If so, this form of communication would not only be unhackable, it would be nearly instantaneous. Pretty cool in my opinion. In the next part of the article, they talk about the interactions of photons and matter. And they talk about how the discovery of this electron shaking creating copies was actually a side effect, but now they're trying to duplicate the process so that they can recreate it. I will link to the full article below if any of you all want to go ahead and read about it. We truly are living in an exciting age. Every day, new science and technologies are changing the way that we view the universe, and it is my pleasure to have you all along with me on my search for universal truth. Well guys, for now, that's all I've got on recent science and technology updates. As always, this has been Manny at Area 503, and I wish you all the best until we meet again. And I am out of here to continue my search for universal truth.